because the people that we are trying to bring into the tent of the New World Order have said, shove it where the sun doesn't shine. Because we talk about it all the time. Do you know what the status quo is? Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. Glad to be with you. Episode number 164, Status Quo. You notice we're experimenting with some format changes because we're getting great feedback from people that care about the podcast, like Scott suggested maybe we shouldn't start with music because people are scrolling through and they go, hey, I heard that song before they never get to the content. And we got Tanner in here, and we're really focused in 2025 of growing the audience, which means I want to thank you for your support, wish you happy holidays, everything that you've done to repost the links. Rob's always reminding people, click the like button and repost the links, and I really appreciate Rob doing that. And I wish you'd all do that. Just put the links to the podcast in your social channels. We're going to work on Rumble much harder next year because Rumble has a much more fertile ground for us to sow seeds in. We at Free People Radio have tried to, grow an audience on YouTube, for the obvious reason that a lot of YouTube's a big tent. And of course, when we do this kind of content, YouTube does not help us. But you're going to start seeing a lot more shorts and clips coming through, and just repost them because we are a political action community. We're working together to get something done. I'd like to be an entertainer. I like to be entertaining. I like to be funny. I like to tell stories. But that's all about keeping you engaged and to build the community for one goal: restoring republicanism as the philosophy that undergirds the United States of America, because we got a new philosophy, right? This post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which is, hey, guess what? Communism. And what is the critical element of communism is there is no God. Religion is an opiate of the masses. Right out of Marx. And then it gets repeated, and you look in every communist country, like China. There's no traditional culture there. The Maoists destroyed it as much as they could. Of course, when you get out into the countryside, and there's 1.5 billion there. I mean, it's hard to get the tradition. They've beaten it out as much as they can, and over time it will continue to die out unless there's some kind of revival within the Chinese people about their, ancient underpinnings of their culture. And, when you look at Chinese movies, for example, it's still there. They have a theology, they have a history, they have a worldview that is quite distinct from a European philosophical movement called Marxism. And that's why when you listen to the Chinese talk about their political organization, they'll say they're Marxists in their own unique Chinese way. And that is true. But young Chinese people know very little about the esoteric traditions of their country. And the people that I learned those traditions from fled Asia. They fled. They left, no different than my family, the ones that got out, left the Ukraine, which at that time was a region in Russia, like the upper Midwest is a region in the United States. Those of my family members that survived, my forebears, escaped with the clothes on their back. That's how they left. And in a very similar fashion, we have people from Asia that ran out of there. They escaped the communist rule in 1949. Many of the great masters went to Hong Kong and then immigrated here to the United States. There was a very famous Chinese master named T.T. Liang that immigrated here to Minnesota. Now, he's been dead for decades. But when I was Tanner's age, he was active here, and he was, impactful on many people that I was involved with at that time. So the Marxist idea, the post-World War II Democrat liberal order idea, is essentially a repudiation of the republicanism that preceded it. That's why we're doing That's why I'm doing the podcast, and that's why I hope you're here. That we're looking for the arguments and for the ways. I was listening to MSNBC this morning, and Morning Joe was talking about that the Democrats have to convert people, convert like a religious conversion, because that's what they're doing. They're converting people from the republicanism that undergirds the country's history to the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which is the religion of the globalists. And they say it's secular, but that secularism is in fact religious. It has all the hallmarks, the anthropological hallmarks of a religion. It's a religion that worships what? The human intellect. Which, of course, if you go back and you look at the traditional, that would be one of the 7 deadly sins: pride, arrogance. Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning, David.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good this morning.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Tanner was in Brighton early this morning. We got the timer
on the wall,
on
so
the
I
wall
can see
now,
the
so it's
time
working
now.
great. And we're going to be working on different format changes, and you're going to just have to let us experiment with it because we want to cast a wider net. Now, again, I want to thank you, and I also want to say it is the holidays, and I do such a poor job of being a pitchman. You know, there are people that view me as a salesman, right? I mean, even for a big part of my life, that's what I did. I owned a business and I sold stuff. You know, when you own a business, you're selling your bank, you're selling all your employees, you're selling all your suppliers, you're selling your customers, you're selling your family members to tolerate the life of the entrepreneur. You're constantly selling. And since I got involved in this great battle that we're living through between the globalists and the nationalists all over the world, as we said on the last podcast, it's the same everywhere, but a little bit different. I forget to sell because but I realize what I'm selling is I'm selling republicanism. And it's a really tough sell. It really is. Because the value is spiritual. And if you don't believe in the spiritual and you're talking to somebody you want to convert, it's tough to sell them something that they don't believe exists. And that is why the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which stands on those pillars, one of which is the scientific method and democracy, for example, those two mingled together, those pillars that uplift that whole intellectual architecture: equity, which is communism; democracy, which includes a woman's right to choose; and then the scientific method. That's how these people go to market, and the scientific method is so effective. I was looking in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and article after article supports this scientific method idea. And I'm not opposed to science. I'm opposed to the extermination of traditional culture because it has such great value to my health and well-being. And I don't think the masters of the current tech world view those traditional skills. I don't think they hold them in very high regard. And okay, let's prove to the people that they're wrong. We can go do our own thing and self-govern. And then the cornerstone of self-governance, of course, is well-being. And that's the meaning of the whole deal. That's why republicanism became an action philosophy, to give people a way like a Tao to maximize their health and well-being. I don't see any other reason to do politics, but that's me. I got people I'm going to see at State Central Committee on Saturday, the 14th. They think the reason we do politics is to maintain the New World Order, and they're Republicans. So they either know not what they do or they're evil. What's the difference? The result is the same: chaos in the party. So this is episode 164, Status Quo. It's December 11th, 2024, Wednesday morning. Tanner, we were talking about the schedule this week. Originally, as I said, on Tuesday night, this is going to go up on Thursday the 12th, 7:30 p.m. Good evening to you. we said we were going to have Walter Hudson on, and Walter was going to show up this morning, Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning, he was going to show up. He was going to show up and talk and discuss what's going to happen on Saturday. And it was, I invited him. He said, yeah, I'll be there. Looking forward to it. And then a day later, he said, something came up. Okay. Well, I was talking to a friend of mine over at the Truth Hurts podcast, Action for Liberty, Maggie Jesse, who's cool and a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. This kid's an up-and-comer. This kid is sensational. In fact, when I found out how young he was, he's just a little bit older than you. This, for his age, whoa, phenom, superstar. And he told me that Kip Christensen had been scheduled to go over to the Action for Liberty studios to speak on that podcast before State Central. And strangely, Kip also canceled. Why would that? Walter and Kip were so sorry you couldn't make it. The after action reports, hey, you know what? We don't need a lot of analysis after action because we are going to see the results and understand them quite well. One of two things are going to happen. The establishment is going to maintain control or they're not. How much can we comment on that? It's like, hey, before the football game, we tune in on Sunday morning to watch the NFL Today and all the players, right? Do you watch football, young man? No.
I don't watch any sports. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I still remember we used to have Jimmy the Greek when I was your age. That's a classic. We should run that clip someday just to let everybody know how far we've come. But, they get in and they talk about, the strengths of the teams and the weaknesses of the teams and the injury reports and the total picture of the whole NFL. They get everybody ready to watch the event. After, hey, score 20-10, somebody won, somebody lost. Not a lot of need for replays onto the next event.
Can I be honest with you, David?
Please.
I think you're a little bit of a salesman.
You think so?
But the difference is you have a heart of gold, so I've grown to like you. But you got to be real.
Are you implying that you don't like salespeople?
No, not normally.
That's the great thing
It's
about
because it always seems
No,
like
wait a sec.
to...
Stop. That's the great thing about TireGet.com. You don't have to be involved with a salesperson. It's all displayed for you right online and 11 different brands. And if you have a question, you call in and talk to me, which is great. The price is right. The service is right. I was in a tire dealership this week because my brakes were screwed up.
Really?
And I went in, and, I know a thing or two about the tire business, which is great because when I go to a tire store, they don't know. I mean, I even tell them because it's full disclosure. I always tell them I'm in the tire business, but, they don't understand what that means. So they tell me everything. I said, well, if I had to buy new tires here, what would you charge me to dismount my old tires, mount my new tires, balance my new tires, and give me a new valve stem? I'm thinking I need new tires because I do. And they said it's $40 a wheel. $40 to dismount, mount, balance, new valve stem. Target's $25 a wheel. That right there on 4 tires is going to save you $60. And this was like a mainline, big time. This was a top of the line place right by my house. And, that's $60 just on the service, let alone you can call me the heart of gold salesman and we'll get you what you need, not what we want to sell, because I don't have a dog in the hunt. The margins are so thin online for e-commerce. We just want you to come in because when you do it, you're supporting the podcast. And it's going to allow me to expand the programming. And we got Tanner's going to be working. It's not Tanner's mission to make this thing. Yeah, I was thinking about this before I came on. There are people in the podcast business, and we're going to talk about this tonight. Status quo, we're going to put in a clip here coming up about Christmas. And a lot about life is seeing the sacred within this profanity. I would like to have 100 million viewers. I would. It'd be great. It's not up to me. It's not up to me. It's up to you, the viewing and listening audience, to proliferate because you think the content is good, or it's up to forces I don't understand because I don't understand what the plan is. But I'm going to continue to practice my art and sharpen my skills in the hopes that some days the audience will be huge because I want to have a big effect. But you know what? We are having an effect. And we're going to talk about that tonight. The effects that we are having. All of us, every one of us at this kind of very sacred time, we can reflect on all the good things we do. Tanner said, I have a heart of gold. He's correct. I do. I don't know if I like heart of gold. I have a
Balls of steel.
I have a unshakable love of the search for truth. It's more important to me than anything else in my life. That makes me unique. I suffer because of it, and that's okay. I get used because of it, and that's okay. I get lied to. Just this week, I sat down with someone, and they lied to me for 2 hours, and I believed them because I'm not a liar, and I take people at face value. And with a day later, I found out, wow, everything you said to me was a lie. This happens. We, as Republicans, want to refresh our culture so that lying is, we're not going to end it, but let's help it be replaced by truth telling. You know, one of the fundamental cultural, what would you call this? A key concept. A key concept of our culture is George Washington, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't tell a lie.
No, that was Abe Lincoln.
That was Abe Lincoln?
Yeah, Honest Abe.
Honest Abe.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
100% positive.
Honest Abe couldn't tell.
Abraham Lincoln is my favorite president.
I thought George Washington couldn't.
I'm sure he too. I bet he. I'll Google this real quick.
There's something about honesty, and if I'm wrong, if it's Lincoln, that's even closer to the current time. We have a premium in our culture traditionally on search for truth. That's very critical. Very critical.
Oh, you're thinking about Washington saying I can't tell a lie after chopping down his father's
Yeah,
cherry tree.
that's correct.
Yeah. I see.
See?
Yeah.
Goes all the way back to and then we had Honest Abe,
Yep.
which we used to have a joke. It was like George Washington could not tell a lie. Richard Nixon could not tell the truth. And Jimmy Carter couldn't tell the difference. There's a little historical, like a little joke in a bottle from 1977. So, but truth telling has now we get lied to constantly to each other. We're lying to each other constantly. We're lying to ourselves constantly. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. This is about the status quo. Tonight's episode is about the status quo. And what is the status quo? How does it express itself? Because we talk about it all the time. We talk about, we're here to challenge the status quo. Do you know what the status quo is?
No. I
Great.
mean, it's just hard to put into one sentence.
Oh, no, we're going to put it into one sentence here momentarily.
Okay.
But before we get there, TireGet, TireGet.com. TireGet is here for the movement and for all the broadcasters and channels and stations that are presenting this content for you. TireGet is a online e-commerce platform where you can buy your tires. Now, everybody buys tires, or most of us buy tires. There's everything there that you need for your vehicles. All kinds of different brands, premium major brands, premium private label brands, every kind of tire. You go there, you pick your tire. We will ship the tires to the installer right by your house at no extra charge. You pay TireGet to have your tires installed. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need in tires and the best customer service in the tire business. So the next time you buy tires, think of TireGet. You got to buy your tires from someone. Please buy them from us. Welcome back, and thank you for listening. And also remember, Christmas time, you're going to have to buy some knickknacks for people that you are associated with or that you love. The Free People store is there at freepeopleradio.com. Please please, a little bit, please. I'm selling them. I don't want to beg because it's unseemly. But we got bills to pay around here. Thank you very much. A big part of tonight's uh, podcast, The Status Quo, is war. I mean, the status quo for our country, and has been since 1946, is the military industrial complex and how that plays out and how that replicates itself. And that stands in sharp juxtaposition with republicanism. Sharp. We were warned, we've played it. Oh, you got to remind me to put that George H.W. Bush clip up about the New World Order. Just got to say, because, we got to stay up with this stuff. Because this thing didn't exist before 46. And for people like me in the 50s, it hadn't really formed up yet. I mean, it was in the process of becoming the status quo. Eisenhower said at the end of his presidency in 61 that we have to beware of the influence, either sought or unsought, by a permanent military industrial complex and the scientists and technocrats that occupy the leadership in that business model. He warned us, and he was a key proponent of the whole deal. I mean, this is a guy at the end of his life. He had several heart attacks as president. He was the supreme Allied commander in Europe on D-Day, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. You've heard of him, correct? Right. Became president, could have run as a Democrat or a Republican. He ran as one of the first rhinos. He ran Republican, but you know what? Everybody liked Dwight because he was a war hero of the highest order. And he was he had some profoundly moral aspects to his character, but he presided over the country from 52 to 61, where the country engaged in a war against communism all over the world, often covert, often creating civil wars, the kind of stuff that we're seeing right now in Georgia and in Romania. We saw it in Ukraine. We just saw it in Syria, all over the world, these destabilizations of these governments. When this was going on in the 50s, they were practicing. They were not the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency. These agencies were practicing an art that they've now perfected. And of course, at that time, often things went to violence because when, your art form is not perfected, you have to use more power to get the job done. When you become very artistic in what you do, you use the very minimum of power to achieve your goals. And that's what we see going on all over the world now. Things are happening and it looks natural. And nothing's natural. But the formation of this status quo is in direct contradiction to the republicanism that preceded it. Directly in contradiction to ideas like, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. He shall judge between the nations, and shall decide disputes for many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Well, how's that supposed to take place? I mean, these people are waiting for, some kind of magical event, or they don't believe in God at all. That's goes both ways too, because you got these evangelical types, even in the British government at the time of the Balfour Declaration in 1913, that they thought they were ushering in the end times by establishing this, Palestine, turning it into Israel. They believed that. It's in the historical record. All you got to do is read what they wrote, which is, okay. So you're going to create a huge conflict that's going to lead to a global conflagration to usher in the return of the Messiah. Okay, great. That's not a very Judeo idea. That's a different kind of an idea. When I read from Isaiah, he shall judge between the nations and he shall decide disputes for many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares. They, that's you and me. That's called the ballot box, the peace symbol. That's up to us. We don't determine supernatural events of the magnitude of a Messiah appearing. We determine supernatural events like beating our swords into plowshares. And in fact, in traditional culture predating the Christian experience, it was up to the people to create the conditions that allowed for a Messiah to emerge. There was more responsibility put upon the people to be righteous. You know, I think about this all the time. I want God to live in my golden heart, right? I do. But I drive them out of there all the time. Because, how can you have inequity and the search for truth in the same place? It's like matter and antimatter. It doesn't work. And that kind of commitment to really work with ourselves, that's a lifetime commitment. People don't make it. Make it. If we all made it under the guise of a republicanism, the search for truth, the search for well-being, we could beat these swords into plowshares ourselves. Ourselves. We can do it. We're American citizens. Uh, Here's a great one. No temptation has ever overtaken you that is not common to man. Greed, for example, lust, for example, arrogance, for example, sloth, for example, gluttony, for example, jealousy. I mean, there's nothing new about. Tanner, have you experienced any of these feelings in your life as a young man?
Yeah, it's really weird that you bring this all up because I was thinking this morning that talking about the seven deadly sins would be an awesome episode. Because I don't know why the thought crossed my mind, but I realized even for the non-religious, they are great life values. If you look through them all, like they're not lying. Any of those qualities are destructive to you. So I find it really interesting.
Well, isn't that interesting? And I've said that before. You don't have to believe in God to benefit from republicanism. That's what's great about the philosophy. But building on what Tanner said, let's just take greed. Greed. Okay, greed. Equity, as Kamala Harris defined it, is we all start in different places. We all got to end up in the same place. That's greed driven. Greed and jealousy driven. It's the politics of greed and jealousy. I mean, come on. The whole tech thing that's going on, uh, man, it can be for human benefit in the extreme human benefit. It can also be, very arrogant and lead humanity into the kind of hellscapes that, Hollywood predicted when I watched the first Terminator movie, and I think I was your age, 24, 25 years old, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a classic. You don't watch movies.
No, I have seen that one though, but I saw it when I was like a child, so I can't really remember the story.
Well, it was, there was Terminators. There was biotechnology and artificial intelligence that had been created that was at war with humanity. The same idea came up in the Matrix. I mean, our artists have been cautioning us about these technologies. But these ideas of peace, um, they are really in contradiction to the status quo. The status quo is about maintaining this unelected, bureaucratic, administrative, military industrial complex, which affects every state in the union, every city, every county, which we're going to talk about. That's the status quo. The news that matters, this is, stunning. If you can look under the news that matters part, there's a map there that I'd like you to put up as I uh, talk about it. This map is of Syria. This map, that lighter colored portion of the map, is a former United Nations buffer zone in the Golan Heights between the Israeli territory on screen left and the Syrian territory on screen right. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this past Sunday celebrated the overthrow of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who took it over by al-Qaeda-linked militants, and confirmed that Israel has seized a buffer zone inside Syria that separates the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights from the rest of Syria's territory. Quote, "This is a historic day in the history of the Middle East. The Assad regime is a central link in Iran's axis of evil, and this regime has fallen." Netanyahu credited Israel with setting off the process that led to the downfall of Assad. "This is a direct result of the blows we have inflicted on Iran and Hezbollah, the main supporters of the Assad regime," he said. "This has created a chain reaction throughout the Middle East of all those who want to be free from this oppressive and tyrannical regime." He continued, "We will not allow any hostile force to establish itself on our border." And the Israelis occupied, I don't know, a half of Syria is what's going on. They're 40 miles from Damascus. Turkey has grabbed off another giant chunk of Syria. Syria is a failed state. So you got the Kurds, which are militarily supported by we the people, by the United States of America. We have military assets in region. And in the Kurdish area, that's, of course, where all the oil and gas is. I wonder where the profits off of that product goes. And then you got the Turks and you got the Israelis, and President Erdogan of Turkey just yesterday threatened the Israelis that he was going to go to war with them if they didn't withdraw from Syria. Well, I think President Erdogan at this point, what he says, you have to take it, it's for domestic consumption. Because as we said on Tuesday night's podcast, he has betrayed everyone in the region. He betrayed the Russians. He betrayed the Iranians, who he was saying he was getting involved with. He betrayed Assad, who he was trying to get together, allegedly. He betrayed everybody, because who is he really? He's a front man for the United States efforts in the region. Turkey is a NATO country. Period. That's period. Paragraph. I don't know how he can pull this off. And, if he attacks Israel, because the Western alliance is NATO and Israel, if he attacks Israel, he's going to get thrown out of NATO for sure and get crushed. He's not going to do that. He's just talking. This is a cover-up story, in my opinion. Now, what's the Eastern Alliance? Well, the core of the Eastern Alliance is China. They got Russia fighting a proxy war for them against NATO. And then you got North Korea, and you got Iran, and now Syria has fallen. Now, we don't know what the comeback's going to be on Syria. That's not over. That's not over. That's right on Iran's border. That's going to go on. That's a failed state. Like Libya is a failed state. Muammar Gaddafi was killed very ignominiously during the Obama administration. They have had a civil war in Libya since the Obama administration. And we're going to talk about in a minute, this civil war in Syria started under the Obama administration. What? Why are all these civil wars starting under? Did you know that Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize? He won the Nobel Peace. Why are all these civil wars starting under his administration if he's such a peace-loving Nobel Prize winning recipient? You'd think that, peace was peace. But no, peace is war. When peace is war, you've now entered 1984, a great George Orwell book. 1984, was that Aldous Huxley? I think 1984 is, what is 1984? Is it Orwell or Huxley? Orwell. So I second guessed myself. Orwell. Peace is war. War is peace. It's right in 1984. It's in the book. Now, China. China is the core of the Eastern Alliance. The core. And the Chinese announced this week that they're banning the export of gallium, germanium, two critical rare earth metals that are used to create the green economy. They ban the exports of these as a tit-for-tat response to the Biden administration imposing export controls on high technology chips to China, which, if you think about it, we were talking about Tuesday night, the Willow chip. Did you
Mm.
read about that?
No.
You were interested in it, though, weren't you?
The Willow chip?
The Willow chip. Yes. Yes, Google has a new chip. I talked about it. Its power is unrivaled. It's quantum computing, something over my head, so it's probably over most of yours. I could read about it. It wouldn't be the same thing as being a physicist. We've entered into an area of, the cutting edge, right? The word around the campfire, or at least their story is, in 5 minutes, this Willow chip can do calculations that would take the most powerful supercomputer in use today more time than the lifespan of the entire known universe to calculate. Wow, that's a movement forward, isn't it?
I would have to see how they do it, because one thing I know is they've known for a while how to make computers really, really fast. The problem is temperature. To produce that much speed, it takes so much power that they can't keep the components cool enough. So I'd be really interested to how they manage to get around that.
It's a good thing for you to research and bring back.
Yeah.
China's dominance in the global mining and processing of rare earth materials is very alarming. It produces 94% of the world's gallium and 83% of the world's germanium. Wow. They seem to have a lock on this deal.
Yeah.
Mining is big in China. Farming's not. They can't feed themselves, but man, when it comes to high tech, they're large and in charge. But you know what? We actually have these rare earth metals right here in the United States of America. We just don't mine them because we've got beautiful mountains that, because we're so green here and we're so sensitive to our environment, um, why would we tear our mountains off when the Chinese are more than happy to do theirs? Let them do it. Let them degrade their environment. Let us export our pollution and our degradation of the environment away from we the people, where we can feel good about ourselves, and we're going to export it over to China, where they have no problem with these issues. And then we're going to import it. And we can sit around and say, oh, we're so green. That's what we've done. We've exported our degradation of the environment to other countries so we could sit around the campfire, and tell ourselves how wonderful we are. It's really kind of a psychological process.
So what do you think the solution is, though?
Trump's going to get in the office, God willing, thank you, God, and they're going to start ripping the tops off of mountains and mining this stuff right in southwest Montana where they know it exists.
I wish that they would find a way that they don't just destroy land.
You know what? They're going to destroy the land because you can't run your semiconductor industry without these rare earth metals, and the Chinese have cut us off. And Trump's not coming to town to make nice with the Chinese. We're not going to war with them. But this guy, Trump, has a sense of America being a great nation, not a vassal state or a subordinated power to a world's governance. I'm not saying that, and this is my great fear about Donald Trump. Donald Trump may, in fact, be a globalist as long as America's running the show. I want a very humble nation of shopkeepers and a very shrunk down military that's just enough to defend our borders. I'm not a proponent of the post World War II Democrat liberal order. What they do in China, where I've been lots. In fact, my ex-chair, because I resigned from SD45, when she said, thank you for your service, she made a very snarky comment about me being to China almost 200 times, which I've said on the podcast, as if somehow I'm compromised because I went to China. This was very snarky, Denise, and very stupid to talk in this fashion. But hey, stupid is as stupid does, and I'm going to just tolerate it and go on. I've been to China. I know that the Chinese, because I've been there, I know Chinese people, they really don't want to fight with us. We want to fight with them. What they want to do is turn us into an economic slave by producing all the things that we need. And that's what they've done. And we're going to talk about that right now. So here's the rap on the Chinese, because they really don't want to fight with us. Because when you spend trillions of dollars on infrastructure, they got this, like, for example, this Belt and Road Initiative where they're building rail and all kinds of intermodal links all over the world to move their goods throughout the world, mostly by land, so that the U.S. Navy cannot stop the distribution of the products that they build. Uh, they don't want all that blown up in an afternoon. Man, when you spend trillions of dollars making a worldwide distribution network, man, those F-35s can take that stuff down in a couple hours. They don't want that. They've just spent 40 years rebuilding their country, 40 years emerging from poverty. When I first started going to China, there was no cars on the road. You'd get run over there by a bicycle, but a car was rare. People walked everywhere or rode bikes, or there was some like mopeds around. They've come so. I remember the first time, an associate of mine, was not a friend, bought a car, and I was in a city called Hangzhou, and he said, "I want to show you my new car." I said, "Great." He said, "Can we take a ride?" I said, "Fantastic." He goes, "I'll pick you up at the hotel." Great. And we got in the car, and that's when, because the roads are made for bikes, they don't really have an inner city infrastructure for driving. They got no parking places. And we had to go from point A to point B, which was like, I don't know, a 15-minute walk. It took us 45 minutes to get there by car. I thought to myself, why are we doing this? But he was so proud of his new car, right? So proud. And I mean, it was a big deal. Now everybody has a car. At that time, he was like ahead of the curve. Uh, they've come so far in China. The people were so poor. I know people that grew up in homes that did not have heat and did not have indoor plumbing. Lots of people like that were subsistence farmers that grew their own food and lived at subsistence level. And I know these people. I mean, there's lots of them. They're called peasants. Now, the peasants, there are no peasants now. They got high-speed internet in their house and washing machine. There's no washing machines when this went on. These people were washing their clothes down in the stream. It's just really, they've done such a fantastic job of upgrading their people's lives, the Communist Party. And here's the rap on them, which is true. They don't follow any rules. I remember back, because I was involved, at the national level back during the Obama administration. And the Obama administration was just coming to grips with the fact that the organization of Chinese business, state-centered capitalism, was unbeatable for our model, because our model's, not centralized. And they were trying to come to grips with, how does this work? And they put your uh, host in the griddler on this deal. In fact, that one I can't talk about. But I mean, just to say, I mean, I want to talk about it, but I'm afraid to, because there's things that I've had to do I can't talk about. And, they were just in the 2008 to 2011, 13, 12, 13 period, that for 4 or 5 years, the first part of the Obama administration, the government was just trying to figure out, how are they doing this? Because they went from 0 to 90 miles an hour like that. And how they did it was, they're very good business people. They were very poor, and they decided in a very organized fashion, that they were going to create an export mercantilistic monster, and they did it. And part of the way they did it was they did not follow any rules. So, and they're continuing to this day. Satellite analysis shows an enormous secret oil shipping hub that fuels Iranian crude to China. A recent report in Bloomberg has collected and analyzed 5 years of satellite images monitoring the South China Sea off Malaysia to detail something which should come as no surprise: Iran and China's sanction busting activity regarding Iranian oil exports has been going strong. Now, there's sanctions on Iran. China says we're not going to buy any oil from Iran because they don't want to get cut off, right? They don't want to get cut off from our U.S. markets. But they're in the Eastern Alliance together. The Iranians, the Chinese, the Russians, North Koreans, and the Syrians who are no more. And, on the front side, they're saying, no, we're not doing this. On the back side, there's a shadow industry there. And in the first 9 months of this year, $20 billion of Iranian crude have gone to China with unflagged vessels, flags of convenience, uninsured old oil tankers. Man, these ships are so old, they're held together with, paper, you know, Band-Aids and wire hangers. I mean, this stuff is illegal from the perspective of who? Our government, the U.S. government. But from the Chinese perspective, they're saying, hey, we're not following your rules. We don't care about your rules. And the Chinese rap on this, for those of you that want to know, they have 1.5 billion people there, and they've had major famines, major problems, big poverty. And their idea is we're going to take care of our people. It's China first. And we're going to learn your rules to exploit them so that we can get done what we want to do, which is make money. And they don't care if they break our rules because they're our rules. So, it's like going to a football game, right? And there's supposed to be 11 people on each side. And we line up with 11 and they line up with 15. And the referee blows the whistle and throws a flag and says, okay, 5-yard penalty. And they show up for the next set of down, for the next play. And they show up 11 and 11. They run a play, great. And then it's second down and whatever. And they line up again. And now there's 18 players on the field. I mean, and the referee blows the whistle and flags them. But you can't win like this because we're playing by rules, looking to enforce what's called the rules-based order, while we maintain relations with the Chinese because they've already penetrated our system. We're reliant on their products. And they don't, we're part of the World Trade Organization, we signed, but we want to change the rules so it reflects us. We got this battle over what the rules are. And we have a set of rules here in this country called anti-dumping. Anti-dumping. What is anti-dumping? Anti-dumping is a penalty which is imposed by the U.S. government when a company or a union shows up and petitions the government with their grievances, i.e., I'm going out of business because the product that's coming in from China is being sold underneath what's a very esoteric concept, less than fair market value. Okay, so we got all these mechanisms in what's called U.S. Department of Commerce, which is a $15 billion a year agency. $15 billion, which compared to the Defense Department is nothing, but it's $15 billion. And what's in that agency? A legion of attorneys and economists which policed thousands of anti-dumping orders, which are taxes, very dangerous taxes, because not only do we tax these products to protect our local industries, but it's a casino. They have a thing called a look back. We're the only country in the world that does this. You're going to like this. So they have this process in the Department of Commerce. They got a thing called the International Trade Commission and the International Trade Administration, and they go through this process and they talk back and forth. It takes a year and a half when somebody makes an allegation of dumping. And then they come out after a year and a half with the dumping percentage. And they say in the tire business, for example, the tax on consumer tires from Thailand is 16.67%. You pay it at the border. But it is not the final tax. It is a deposit on an unfixed future obligation. So after 1 year, all those attorneys and economists and secretaries, and they sit there and they analyze the market. And then they have a new rate that comes out, and that's the final rate on the first year, and it sets the tone for the second year. And then after the second year, In the third year, they review the second year. You never know what you're paying for the product. And unelected bureaucrats sit there holding everybody's cojones in their hands. Because if you paid in 16.67% and somebody says, well, actually, the duty is going to be 76.67%, which is a 50% increase, right? No, 67.67. My math's getting bad because of this damn calculator. But you got a 50% increase. And let's say you brought in $200 million worth of tires. You owe the U.S. government $100 million. What? What kind of deal is that? Isn't that crazy?
It is pretty crazy.
That's crazy. It's a casino. And conversely, if it's 16.67%, and as President Biden did when in the second year they reviewed the first year, and you lowered the rate as he did to 4.5%, they gave $1 billion back to the supply chain. $1 billion. I got nothing because I wasn't participating. But I know people that got 80 million bucks, friends of mine. Hey, guess what? I got 80 million. 80 million? How would you like, young man, to win that at the casino? Isn't that great?
I feel amazing.
They do feel amazing. They like President Biden. That's called passing the cash around. And many of these companies, most of them, actually, you're going to like this. Isn't this great? They're Chinese companies. So they gave $1 billion back, and a lot of that money went straight to China. Straight to China. Thank you, President. But why did you? And here's the crazy part about it. 35% of the U.S. tire business are these low-cost tires made by Chinese companies in Thailand. What? Mind-boggling, right? So now they're going to do the third year look back on the second year. And President Biden was supposed to announce the results on December 9th. Right now. And the strangest thing happened. It's so weird. He passed it off to President Trump. And President Trump's going to make that decision on February 5th. I wonder what's going to happen. And I wonder why it happened. Well, I have a speculation why it happened. The Democrats lost. And they've been pissing on the industrial union workers for many years. Many years. And they made a deal with the USW, the petitioners in the case, the United Steelworkers. They said, hey, we're going to raise the price because 2 tire factories have closed in the United States during the Biden administration. I know we're getting in the weeds here, but this is where the rubber hits the road. How do the policies affect the American people? There was a very large factory owned by Michelin in Ardmore, Oklahoma, probably employed, 3,000 people, 5,000, a lot of people. They closed it because they could not compete effectively with these imports. Now, in a little town like Ardmore, Oklahoma, when you close a plant like that, you're destroying that town. Because there's some strange formula, which I don't know if it's true or false, but they say like for every union job at a factory like that, there's like 5 or 7 jobs in the surrounding area that are dependent on that factory. So that's an economically devastating event to close that factory, which had been there for decades. And believe it or not, there was a 100-year-old factory in Tonawanda, New York, and it also closed. So this neoliberal trade policy, which we talk about, and I know we're getting in the weeds, but we got to know this stuff. This is the stuff we don't know as citizens. We know the jobs go away, but we don't know how they go away. And they go away because of policy. The Biden administration chose to lower those duties, and thousands of American workers lost their jobs. Good paying USW labor. I mean, it hurt these people. And here comes President Trump. Well, I think what President Biden did was he said, we're still pals with the Chinese, but we need the USW if we're ever going to get back into power. So we're going to tell the USW that we're going to kick this to Trump. Trump's going to blow out this supply, I think. And then Maybe some jobs and some production could come back to the United States over time. But it takes a long time for this kind of thing to happen. Nobody's running back to the United States uh, until there's broad bipartisan consensus about onshoring American production. It's going to take 20 or 25 years. This is the battle between neoliberalism, the post World War II Democrat liberal order, one world governance, one world economy, and republicanism, a nation of shopkeepers. And in this kind of anti dumping thing, why I'm not involved in this is how can I take a risk that they're going to raise the duty rate on me? Like Trump's going to come in, it's 4.4%. He might make it 80%. If I was in the deal for $100 million bucks a year, I'd owe $80 million. I can't do that. I'm not that guy. So not only is it a casino, but it's a casino that drives out all the shopkeepers. The only people that can play this game are crooks and the biggest companies. And when I say crooks, hey, if you're not an American citizen and you don't live here and you've got a company here and you suddenly owe the government $100 or $200 million, I don't think you're going to be around to pay it. You're going to run away. And that's what I mean about not following the rules. The rules don't work. The trade architecture does not work because the people that we are trying to bring into the tent of the New World Order have said you can take your rules-based New World Order and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. And now we've got a chance to fix some of this stuff with President Trump. And I know I'm taking time on this, but we've got to know how this policy could work. President Trump has a dumping order he has to make a ruling on. But what he could do, and what he has said he's going to do, is impose what's called a universal tariff, 20%. You're seeing it in the news. Oh, the world's going to come to an end. If he does that and eliminates the need for anti-dumping, first of all, he could reduce the size of the Department of Commerce over time from $15 billion a year to $1 billion a year. You could lay off most of these people. Because if you get a 20% universal tariff, which you pay at the border, and now you don't have these lookbacks and all these economists and lawyers, and then all the lawyers that fight all the cases, and then all the enforcement people that go to collect the money. This is an industry, a huge industry, employing tens of thousands of people in the pursuit of a paper chase. It's not fair. It's prone to corruption. President Biden lowered the rate from 16.67 to 4.5, and 2 factories closed. Now, I don't know why he did it, but if I worked at one of those factories, I would consider that a corrupt decision. Corrupt. Corrupt in the sense that it didn't care about my well-being. And it's prone to error. That's why the rates bounce around. And it's prone to the manipulations of different policies. And this is the greatest policy change on trade since 1946. The post-World War II Democrat liberal order, neoliberal trade policy, which is the unstoppable process of globalization, is about to meet the immovable, the unstoppable, the ever-present, and undomitable spirit of Donald J. Trump. And he's going to say, stop. And how does he stop it? Taxes. Now let's go one step further just to allay your concerns. If the price of energy goes down, which it will, I have more money in my pocket because I fill my tank every week. Do you fill your tank every week, young man?
Yeah.
How much does it cost you to fill your tank?
For me, about, I'd say 35 to 40 bucks. I have a Camry, so it's pretty small.
How would you like it if you filled your tank and it cost you 25 bucks and you had 15 extra dollars a week, which would translate into 60 extra dollars a month?
Well, not only that, the products around me would be a little bit cheaper because it doesn't take as much to get them transported anywhere. So that's also another factor that I'm saving money.
So how much did you pay for those 4 tires I can't remember that you bought
I
from
think it
Target?
was 396
400
total.
bucks.
Yeah,
400
about
bucks.
400 bucks.
Okay. And they're going to be good for 4 years, would you say? Something like that?
2. I drive quite a bit, so 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2 years, the price of that goes up 20%. So instead of it being 400 bucks, it's 480 bucks. So it's $80 over 2 years. And you're going to have uh, maybe $60 a month extra in your pocket just on the energy going down. Your tax rate's going to go down. There's an entire policy here of putting more money in my pocket and setting up the conditions over a 20 or 25-year period if we could develop broad bipartisan consensus on reestablishing the dominance of American manufacturing in American infrastructure, where we could actually change from a guns economy, which is the status quo, which we're going to talk about for the rest of the podcast, to a butter economy, a consumer economy.
Yeah, and I mean, simply put, a consumer economy can't work if we don't have the money here. Money is a resource. And it's like if you're feeding a fire, the money is the wood. That fire is going to stop burning if you don't have any more wood to throw on it. So when you were talking about like the factories that closed down and then, oh yeah, the gas station worker doesn't have a job anymore. Well, of course, no money is in the county. It's not coming to them. That fire is going out.
And where's all the money going?
It's going overseas.
No. It's
Don't think?
going to the military industrial complex
Oh yeah.
to use it overseas.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Minnesota for the Minnesotans here. I just pulled, some facts. The economy was about $450 billion. Okay, pretty good, Minnesota. Ain't California, it ain't Texas. Texas is about $2 trillion, about 4 times bigger. But hey, it's not small money. Where's this money going? What is the status quo? Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's defense contractors, the University of Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic, United Healthcare, for example, welfare and other programs, Social Security, Medicare. That's the status quo. That is the status quo. There are more than 40,000 active federal contracts in Minnesota last year that could be worth as much as $25 billion. I'm talking about military contracts. The Pentagon is by far the biggest federal purchasers of goods and services in Minnesota. There are 27,000 military contracts in force right now worth $11 billion, which is small money. Minnesota is not a big defense contractor. Other than National Guard facilities, Minnesota, we do not have any military bases. And Minnesota is not the home to the headquarters of any major defense contractor. We're an ag state. But defense contractors spread out their facilities in an effort to increase the number of political allies they can influence with their cash. So they're very active here in Minnesota. For instance, you might not know this. There's $3 billion in federal contracts, a company called BAE Systems, located in Minneapolis. It's a top military contractor in the state. BAE produces small arms, ordnance, and marine equipment, as well as providing the Navy with ship repairs. BAE Systems employs about 500 people in Minneapolis, and the company has been in the state since World War II. Quote, BAE Systems remains aligned to the U.S. national defense strategy and modernization priorities of our U.S. military services. We continue to design, develop, and manufacture innovative solutions that are in strong demand to keep warfighters safe in battle and support our national security. That sounds so nice. They keep our warfighters safe in battle. Who's going to get on the other side of that, right? Alliant Tech Systems in Plymouth, very close to where I live. You cross the street from my house, you're in Plymouth. $1.5 billion in Defense Department contracts. It's a subsidiary of Northrop Grumman. Supplies the military with small arms, ordnance, explosives, ammunition, and aircraft parts, among other things. Honeywell's facilities in Minnesota do a lot of business with the government. Computers, high-tech services. Even companies in Minnesota that are not usually considered defense contractors do business with the Pentagon. For instance, 3M, $25 million in Department of Defense contracts. 3M also has contracts with many other federal agencies. There's research and development contracts with the University of Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic. And the largest federal contractor in the state is U.S. Bank. U.S. Bank, my old bank. I used to bank there. They used to support my tire business. Headquartered in Minneapolis, has $8 billion in contracts to process financial transactions for a number of federal agencies. The Department of Health and Human Services has contracts with the state last year for $1.3 billion. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture had about $1 billion in contracts. The Mayo Clinic has contracts for over $100 million. And the University of Minnesota also receives millions of dollars in contract money. Cargill, right down the block from my house, the largest privately owned company in the world, is a big U.S. Department of Agriculture contractor with $263 million worth of potential contracts last year. The federal government's contracts funnel billions into the state of Minnesota. It bolsters the local economies, and it represents these contracts are just a fraction of what the federal government spends in Minnesota because the government is funneling billions and billions of additional dollars to the state in grants and formula funding to state and local governments and to individuals through a number of entitlement programs, including Medicare and Social Security, food stamps, and veteran benefits. It would seem to me in reading this, and I hope it seems to you, Tanner. Tanner, are you getting any money from the government?
Like, assistance wise?
Did you get any checks from the government?
Oh, no.
Nothing.
No, nothing.
Boy, you're a dummy.
Oh,
You should go to work for the
thanks.
government. Look at this. Me too. Hey, I'm Social Security age. I'm not taking Social Security. I must be stupid. Look at all this money. So much money because Amy Klobuchar is such a great senator. Listen to this one. For every dollar we Minnesotans pay in taxes, Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith have worked it out with Tom Emmer as their ally in this, with Fishback and Stauber and Finstad, because that's what these people do. This is their job. This is how they get reelected. For every dollar I pay in taxes that goes to the feds give Minnesotans $1.59 in return. Hey, that's pretty good. That's what they're all doing together, is they're getting every American citizen on the payroll. And that's the status quo. And that's why changing our country into a well-being culture is very difficult, because the dependency that has been born amongst the citizens in this ever-expanding governance makes it in everybody's vested interest to keep voting the same people. And what do they actually do? Look under number 4 and play that first piece where it says Wesley Clark. This is the status quo as it plays out in the real world.
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
That's General Wesley Clark, former Supreme Commander of NATO forces in Europe, talking about a time right after 9/11 where the decision came down during the Bush administration to take down 7 countries. The policy was continued under the Obama administration. It was continued under the Trump administration. It was continued under the Biden administration. This is the status quo. So we're taking in $1.59 for every dollar we're sending to the federal government. We got all these people on the payroll everywhere. Social Security, Medicare, University of Minnesota, Mayo Clinic, defense contractors, USDA, Cargill, 3M, the whole state is permeated and shot through with dependency on federal funds. And why is that? Because it all flows uphill and then plays itself out as some evil group of people in the Pentagon. Doesn't that sound kind of just strange by itself? I mean, we just tolerate that. The Pentagon. What kind of symbol is that for the center of our peacekeeping forces? The Pentagon. The Pentagon would be a reversal of peacekeeping. And they made a plan to take down 7 countries in 5 years. Well, hey, things don't go on schedule. We really can't predict the time. We're just going to set up the conditions that we achieve our goals. And the goal was, let's take down Syria, and Syria just came down. Lebanon came down. Somalia's a mess. Iraq, they took Iraq down. I mean, these people sit around, and why do they do it? Because it's the business model of the country. That's what the status quo is. So, Hillary Clinton, man, she was the one that was the architect of this Syrian deal. She was the person who put together the conditions to set up this bloodbath in Syria, where 3 million Syrians are now living in Turkey in basements, and another 10 million have fled to Europe, which is a big immigration issue. The country is a failed state. Turkey's grabbed off a piece. Israel's grabbed off a piece. The Kurds have grabbed off a piece. And it's a mess. And, you say, oh, well, Bashar al-Assad was a horrible dictator. That was the cover story. That's not why they went to war there. They went to war there because they have a geostrategic plan about destroying Iran, because the New World Order does not tolerate dissent, kind of like the Republican Party of Minnesota today. No dissent allowed. Like Alex Plekish called me a mutineer because I don't agree with them. No dissent allowed. So these people were dissenters. They didn't want to participate in a communist, godless world architecture. After all, they believe in God. So they fought back. So the New World Order has been taking them down state by state. 10 million Syrians have left the country. There's at least 250,000 dead. It's probably 1 million dead. It's a failed state, and Hillary Clinton bragged about it. When she was running for president in 2016. It's just a CIA operation to the max. A CIA operation. That's why it's so hard to change the status quo. We don't understand how dependent we are on government. Goes all the way down to federal funding for roads. I mean, we are so un-Republican in how we are living our lives. Republicanism is about self-governance. Our self-governance is a mere illusion. We have the illusion of choice. This policy to take down these countries started under Bush, was continued under Obama, was continued under Trump, was continued under Biden. It's a 22-year policy. Apparently doesn't matter who we elect, does it? If Wesley Clark can sit there and say that they decided to take down Syria in about 2003 and it fell in 2024, isn't that evidence that it's a 21-year bipartisan uniparty agreement in destabilizing all these governments? And why would we be pursuing that as we the people when our roads are falling apart, for example? Are you shocked by that?
Yeah, I'm just kind of feel sick to the stomach.
You got kind of a funny look on your face.
Yeah, this episode's been really sad for me. I'm not gonna lie. It's just the status quo is really, really sad. You asked me at the beginning, what is the status quo? And I was like, oh, it's so much. Well, now you're laying it out on the table and it's making me sick.
That's what we're funding with our work. I mean, I'm paying my taxes. I mean, I'm taxed 50% of what I earn. You know, when you put in all the sales taxes and income taxes and I mean, all I am for the government is a federal tax collector. Really, if you want to get down to it, I'm a business owner. Business owners are tax collectors. So when Jesus said he sat with the tax collectors, that'd be an asshole like me. Because when you run a business, what you really do is I collect federal taxes for the federal excise taxes in the millions. I collect duties and tariffs in the millions, payroll taxes, Social Security, Medicare. I mean, I'm running a business for the government. I've said for years, man, for the amount of money that I collect for the government, they come in and harass me and audit me and make me feel terrible and stressful. Man, if I was getting, you know, if they ran it the way I would run it, if you're going to go collect $50 million a year, you get a week in Vegas pampered in pink as a reward, like an incentive. But they make you collect the taxes and then they beat on you even harder. The whole thing is profoundly not Republican. And we have to move from where we are back into republicanism, and Trump is a first step. Trump is a first step, but we got to hold him accountable. And how do we do that? Please play under number 5 the clip, It's a Wonderful Life. It's a 6-minute clip. It's about Christmas, and I'm going to comment on this on the way out of the podcast today. Please.
I didn't have time to get some stylish underwear. Wife gave me this on my last birthday. I passed away in it. Oh, Tom Sawyer's drying out, too. You should read the new book Mark Twain's writing now.
How did you happen to fall in?
I didn't fall in. I jumped in to save George.
You what? To save me?
Well, I didn't I? You didn't go through with it, did you?
Go through with what?
Suicide.
Oh, it's against the law to commit suicide around here.
Yeah, it's against the law where I come from, too.
Oh, where do you come from?
Heaven? I had to act quickly. That's why I jumped in. I knew if I were drowning, you'd try to save me. You see, you did. And that's how I saved you.
Very funny.
Your lip's bleeding, George.
Yeah. I got a bust in the jaw in answer to a prayer a little bit ago.
Oh, no, George. I'm the answer to your prayer. That's why I was sent down here.
How'd you know my name?
Oh, I know all about you. I've watched you grow up from a little boy.
What are you, a mind reader or something? Well, who are you then?
Clarence Oddbody, AS2.
Oddbody. AS2. What's that AS2?
Angel, second class. Cheerio, my good man.
Oh, brother. Gee, whiz. I wonder what Martini put in those drinks. Hey, what's with you? What'd you say just a minute ago? Why'd you want to save me?
That's what I was sent down for. I'm your guardian angel.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Ridiculous of you to think of killing yourself for money. $8,000.
Yeah, now just things like that. Now, how do you know that?
I told you I'm your guardian angel. I know everything about you.
Well, you look about like the kind of an angel I'd get. Sort of a fallen angel, aren't you? What happened to your wings?
I haven't won my wings yet. That's why I'm an angel second class.
I don't know whether I like it very much being seen around with an angel without any wings.
Oh, I've got to earn them. And you'll help me, won't you?
Sure. How?
By letting me help you.
Only one way you can help me. You don't happen to have $8,000 on you, do
Oh,
you?
no, we don't use money in heaven.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting it. Comes in pretty handy down here, bub.
Oh, tut.
I found it out a little late. I'm worth more dead than alive.
Now, look, you mustn't talk like that. I won't get my wings with that attitude. You just don't know all that you've done. If it hadn't been for you...
Yeah, if it hadn't been for me, everybody would be a lot better off. My wife and my kids and my friends. Look, little fella, why you go off and haunt somebody else, will you?
No, now you don't understand. I've got my job.
Oh, shut up, will you?
Oh, this isn't going to be so easy. Yeah, so you still think killing yourself would make everyone feel happier, eh?
Oh, I don't know. I guess you're right. I suppose it'd been better if I'd never been born at all.
What'd you say?
I said I wish I'd never been born.
Oh, you mustn't say things like that. You... Wait a minute. That's an idea. What do you think? Yeah, that'll do it. All right. You've got your wish. You've never been bored. You don't have to make all that fuss about it.
What'd you say?
You've never been born. You don't exist. You haven't a care in the world. No worries, no obligations, no $8,000 to get, no potter looking for you with a sheriff.
Say something else in that ear.
Sure, you can hear out of it.
What's the doggonest thing? I haven't heard anything out of that ear since I was a kid. Must be that jump in that cold water.
Your lips stop bleeding too, George.
What do you know about that? What's happening? It stopped snowing out here, didn't it? Well, what's happening here? What I need's a couple of good stiff drinks. How about you, Angel? You want a drink? Come on, as soon as these clothes of ours are dry.
Clothes are dry.
I wouldn't know about that. The stove's hotter than I thought. Come on, get your clothes on. We'll stroll up to my car and get... I'm sorry. I'll stroll. You fly.
I can't fly. I haven't got my wings.
You haven't got your wings. That's right.
So that's an iconic scene from an iconic movie, It's a Wonderful Life, with Jimmy Stewart. It's a Christmas classic. Many of you have watched it, but now let's watch it with a kind of a different eye. Jimmy Stewart was a very talented young man. He was the son of the owner of the local savings and loan, a bank that existed to take citizen deposits and fund the creation of citizen housing, a very modest goal. His father was a very good man. Jimmy Stewart's character, George Bailey, wanted to explore the world, go everywhere. He had great hopes. He wanted to be somebody that was different than the hometown boy. And his father died, and he ended up the president of this savings and loan, working with his Uncle Billy, his father's brother. And he was a force for good in his community. He had been a force for good his whole life. His brother had almost drowned, and when they were young, and he jumped in and saved his brother from drowning, and he lost the hearing in his ear. And his brother went on to be a great World War II hero, saving the lives of thousands of people. He helped a local pharmacist. He worked for the local pharmacist who was very despondent and was going to accidentally poison people. And he confronted the pharmacist and saved many lives there as a young man. You know, it just was an isolated incident. Didn't really think it was that important. And he was the president of the savings and loan, affecting the lives of thousands of people. And there was an evil man in the town, Potter, who was trying to take control of the savings and loan and didn't want people to own their own houses. Potter wanted people dependent on his rental units. And there was a battle between self-governance and equity in my home, gaining something, and dependency and exploitation, which was a big theme of the movie. And then one thing led to another, and George, who had a wife and kids, and he had other women interested in him. I mean, the whole thing that men go through is in this movie. And he had a financial crisis that was threatening his business. And he was so despondent, he was ready to kill himself, to commit suicide. And the angel Clarence jumped in the water because he knew George had a heart of gold. Rather than kill himself, he went to save the angel. And then he got his wish. He didn't exist. I wish I'd never been born. Something that many of us feel from time to time, all the time. The point of the movie in relationship to the concept of the status quo, whether or not this podcast ever grows to have millions of viewers and listeners, which I certainly hope it does, but you're listening, you're viewing, and we're in the holiday season, and we need to understand that there's a sacredness to our lives, an importance to our lives that we don't really recognize. All the people that we touch, all the things that we do that ripple out into the world and affect all of creation, every single one of us. What the status quo seeks to create in us is a feeling of dependency and hopelessness and meaninglessness so that we can be controlled, so that the status quo, this business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy continues in these great United States of America, and this evil continues to grow. But each one of us can affect all the people around us. That's what this great movie is about, that our lives are intertwined and enmeshed. So to the extent that we can talk to each other about this, talk to our friends, talk to our neighbors, talk to our coworkers, that we stay focused on restoring balance in our society, each one of us, we're all George Bailey. Watch the movie. It'll uplift you for the holiday season. It reminds me of my sacredness as a child of God on this planet, trying to work as a force for good. And on that note, I want to wish you a good weekend. It's Thursday night. Have a nice time. Be well. We're getting very close to Christmas. Enjoy your Christmas shopping. And we're going to go out with a beautiful piece of jazz music. Sarah Vaughan, fantastic. Enjoy it. God bless you. Good health to you. And I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday night, God willing.
Have a good night, everybody.
Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. Feel like I'm clinging to a cloud I can't understand. I get misty just holding your hand. Walk my way, and 1,000 violins begin to play. Might be the sound of your hello, that music I hear. I get misty the moment you're near. You can see that you're leading me on, and it's just what I want you to do. Don't you notice how blissfully I'm lost? That's who I on my own? Would I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hat from my glove? I'm too misty and too much in love. You can see that you're leading me on, and it's just what I want you to do. Don't you notice how hopelessly I'm lost? That's who I follow in you. On my own. Would I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hat from my glove? I'm too misty and too much in love. We get too misty and too much in love.